Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another session of You've Got Mel. So, as you can tell, You've Got Mel has another look to it. I'm going to be interviewing myself mostly and telling you different vignettes, episodes, stories from my life. Hopefully, they will resonate, and perhaps I will turn these stories into a book someday. And of course, your feedback is very valuable to me wherever you are. So, wherever you are, say hello. I'm sitting alone here in Ramat Gan. Upstairs, it's pretty hot, but I will be with you for the next 15 or 20 minutes talking about something I've never talked about, which is why I love poetry. Now, I guess most people don't love poetry. If I were to ask you what percentage of people read poetry, what would be your guess? My guess was 11%, and I was almost spot on. About 12% of people read poetry at least once a year. That's 1 out of 8 people. It's not very many, but as poets know, they have a very select audience. And of course, poetry is something that you should love and embrace because it is the essence of humanity. It's like taking humanity and, to paraphrase T.S. Eliot, turning it into crunching it into a ball. And this ball has infinite mass and it resonates deep within you. So, as a scientist for most of my life, where did my love of poetry come from? And for those of you who doubt my love of poetry, well, I married a poet, for one thing. I published many of her books. I've translated her poetry and many famous contemporary Israeli poets, including Natan Yonatan, Ronnie Somek, Israel Bar Kochav, and many others. And I wrote poetry myself. I even published poetry. But when I met my wife, Shuli, and I saw the wonderful quality of her own poetry, I said, okay, I will stick to jazz and writing children's books. But where does this love come from? My parents weren't poets. My siblings aren't poets. So when I thought about it, I went back to grade 13. What is grade 13, you ask me? Well, it's the senior year in Ontario back in the 1960s. It was like the first year of college. We had 5 high school years, grade 9 to grade 13. So if you didn't want to go to first year college, you could stay in high school. And grade 13 was almost like going to university. And one of our professors in grade 13 was a man named E.W. Benoit. We never knew what E.W. stood for. He was a very, very interesting guy, a wonderful teacher. Lots of stories about him, that he was thrown out of Lisgar because he actually forced a student to sit on a ledge on the 3rd floor as punishment. Some people said that he was a commando during the Second World War. We never found out anything about E.W. Benoit. You can't find anything about him on the internet. All that I know was he was one of the most remarkable teachers in my life. Grade 13B, a class of science majors. Our first session with Mr. Benoit, and he says to us, I know you're studying science. I know you probably think that this is a waste of time, but I am going to make you love literature. I'm going to make you love poetry. You are going to study 4 Shakespearean tragedies before Christmas, and you will love it. And of course, I did. King Lear has been with me my whole life. And of course, Shakespeare, even when he doesn't write in rhyme, it's all poetry. It's so lyrical. And I still remember large quotations from King Lear off by heart. You do me wrong to take me out of the grave, for thou art the soul in bliss, but I am bound upon a wheel of fire that mine own tears do scald like molten lead. I may have got a bit wrong. But E.W. Benoit did make us love English literature. And as a case in point, I have had for the last 53 years this anthology of verse that we studied in grade 13. Here, I don't know whether you can see. Mel Rosenberg, 13b. And this incredible anthology had poems, of course, by T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound and Robert Browning, and a young Canadian poet named Leonard Cohen. But most importantly, perhaps, on page 314, an essay by a guy named John Ciardi, I don't know, called How Does a Poem Mean? Not what does a poem mean, but how does a poem mean? Going back to Pestalozzi, things that we learn can also resonate emotionally, and perhaps that is the most important type of learning, the kind of course that we forget about, that we ignore, that we don't examine students for. But this is what stays with us for the rest of our lives, the emotional side. So how does a poem mean? Not what does a poem mean, how? How does it affect you? So this was my lesson in grade 13. T.S. Eliot, one of my favorites, the love song of J. Edgar Prufrock. Let us go then, you and I. So was it grade 13? Well, thinking about it, actually, it wasn't even grade 13. Because I can trace my love of poetry back further to grade 7. Grade 7? Yes, grade 7. Our English teacher was a lady named Mrs. Parkinson. I don't remember her first name. We never knew her. She was just Mrs. Parkinson. She taught us in 6th grade and 7th grade. No pictures of her. I can't remember what she looked like. And one thing that she did, which was remarkable for 1962, stands out in my mind and changed my life. Mrs. Parkinson ran a contest, a poetry reading contest. In other words, there was a contest where you would learn a poem off by heart, and during recess or at the end of school, you'd come up to the front and recite it to her off by heart, and then she would record the number of lines that you've memorized. Wow. So I was quite a wuss in school. Some people call it a nerd, a bit obnoxious. I had 2 girls in my class, Miriam Eve Schnitzer and Dan Krieger, who drove me crazy because they were better than me. This prompted me to enlist in this contest, hoping that I would finally be able to beat everybody and win a trophy for memorizing the most lines of English poetry. So during the course of the year, I memorized many, many poems. Which ones stuck to me? Well, the ones that stuck to me, of course, I learned Wordsworth off by heart and some others, but I fell in love with Lewis Carroll. And what we say in Yiddish is mishigas, his craziness, his nonsense. I just couldn't get over it. I remember my dad bought me a book of Ogden Nash poems because he saw that I was interested, and of course, I loved Ogden Nash too. But going back to Lewis Carroll, Jabberwocky, Come to My Arms, My Beamish Boy, Kalu Kalei, he chortled in his joy. And of course, the irony is that all the nonsense words that Carroll used and we memorized in grade 7, many of them turned into actual words in the dictionary. Father William, you are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white. And yet you incessantly stand on your head. You think at your age this is right. Now, I have not recited this poem for 50 years, but I remember it. Lewis Carroll, and of course, the greatest of them all, the walrus and the carpenter, were walking hand in hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only swept away, they said, it would be grand. Wow, I was transported into another world. But let me tell you the funny thing that happened. So here I am every night going home, doing my homework, and then memorizing a poem for tomorrow because I wanted to beat everybody. And Mrs. Parkinson was not telling us what the stats were, who was winning, who was losing, and so on. There was a kid in class, a nice kid named Ira Greenblatt, but I guess that he had some kind of a sense of humor, and he saw me reciting all these poems. And he came up to me one day and he said, Mel, they called me Melvin back then, or Melech. Mel, how many lines of poetry have you memorized? I said, Ira, don't tell anybody. I don't want Miriam and Eve to know, but I've already recited over 200 lines of poetry by heart. He looked at me and said, that's nothing. I've already over 400. And every time during the course of the year, when I would progress, I had 500. Ira had 700 lines memorized already. Come the end of the year, the award ceremony, the trophy for the most lines of poetry memorized off by heart in grade 7 went to me. I had memorized 914 lines of poetry. I remember to this day. Who was in next place? God knows, somebody who memorized maybe 400 lines. Ira perhaps had memorized 70 lines of poetry the whole year. But of course, Ira, he maybe thought he had the last laugh, but actually it was me or I who had the last laugh. Because while I was memorizing those 914 lines of poetry, I fell deeply in love with this genre, and it stays with me to this very day. So if you see me writing my children's books, sometimes in rhyme, sometimes not, but always with a lyrical sense, at least I hope, then you should know that it started out in grade 7 in Mrs. Parkinson's English class. So that's all right now for my love of poetry. I'm going to share a few ebooks from Ourboox below. And if you are poets and you want everybody to know it, then please contact me, because Shuli, my wife, and I have done something good for the world. We've enabled poets to publish their books for free and share them in any language, in any country. And if you want to know how to do it, we are here for you. So thank you very much. And I hope to see you tomorrow with another slice of my life. Thanks so much.